Hi, my name is Edwin. I'm doing a presentation today on China as one of the assessments for the course Comparative Global Business Systems. Here is our agenda. We would first go have an overview of China, and then we would go over their culture, politics, economic systems, finance and banking systems, and eventually their legal systems. China is the fourth largest country in the world by area, roughly 9.597 million km². Its estimated population in year 2015 is close to 1.4 billion, whereas the world population is 7.3 billion. It means that China occupies around 19% of the population in the world. It is followed by India and the United States of America. Let's look at this graph, which indicates the projection on China's populations. It will peak around 2030 and start shrinking since then. China has a very formal and hierarchical social structure that extends to business and family life. For example, the younger generations are expected to have respect to their elders, with the eldest member commanding most respect. Humility and respect are also very important in the Chinese cultures. They tend to show modesty when discussing success or not to discuss them at all. Also, people are unlikely to speak up their mind openly. They tend to conceal their honest thinking and opinions. China has one of the oldest cultures in the world. It has multi-religions and it does not have an organized and unified systems of belief and practices. Folk religions, Taoism, Confucianism are the dominated religions followed by Buddhism, Christian, and Muslims. Folk religion believers remain to be the majority in China. They normally go to the Chinese temple to ask for a fortune teller so that they could tell them the futures and what they should be doing. They use joss paper, to worship their ancestors during festivals. Buddhism has also been associated with China, and it's found out that average 10 to 60% of China population claim to have some kind of affiliations of Buddhism. For business, they often employ feng shui masters for instruction on how their offices are to be decorated. They believe it will bring prosperities and fortunes to them. Sometimes before a big project starts, they would host a joystick ceremony with the hope that the project will be successful afterwards. Cuisine. The tradition of cuisine started in the dynasty periods when emperors would host largest banquets with over 100 dishes per meal. It is now commonly used for businessmen to discuss and gain trust with each other. Networking, in Mandarin named guanxis, is also very important in doing business in China. It is often a lengthy process because trust and relationship building is essential for making a business deal. In addition, Chinese are strictly bound by protocols and respect. Even though if you believe the people that you're dealing with have the incorrect concepts, you have to keep it used to yourself and to respect and honor the other persons in public. We now move on to the political systems. Chinese Communist Party has been in power since 1949 after a civil war victory over the forces of Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists. The new regime was then named as the People's Republic of China. The CCP dominates the state and society. It controls four main power that is indicated in this diagram, and we will elaborate more on this diagram. First of all, its military force. Um, the People's Liberation Army is the military force that actually served the CCP. It consists of approximately 1.5 million. The People's Armed Police consists of roughly 800,000 that are normally used internally. The State Council, it is the highest authority of executives. It oversees and implements the policies and day-to-day administrations. The National People's Congress initiate and shape legislations. The deputies are virtually controlled by the Communist Party in practice to approve budgets or personnel appointments that are put before them. The Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference is the committee that the state consults for decisions on government policies. This conference can ignite some discussion or debate, but it is also powerless in reality and remains the Communist Party's control. The Communist Party in China, it is the largest political party in the world, with around 85 million dues-paying members. It held a national congress for every 5 years. Let's take a look at this diagram. A central committee will be elected during the party congress. The party leader would nominate around 10% more of candidates than available positions for elections. After the central committee has been elected, at the first meeting following the party congress, it elects from its member a 25-person Politburo. A more elite Politburo would be elected, which included a general secretary which serves as China's top leader. The elections are believed to be non-competitive. The current party's general secretary is Si Jianping, and his deputy is Li Keqiang. We now move on to the economic systems. It is a coordinated market which firms have close interactions with the government. Business are dominated by state-owned enterprises that produce roughly a third of the country's GDP. Three COEs are ranked in top 10 in the global Fortune 500 firms. The economic structure can be broken into three tiers. Tier 1 industries are vital to the national security. For example, industries like electric power, telecommunication, banks. There are companies like Sinopec, CNPC, China Construction Bank, Bank of China. The Excise Supervision and Administration Commission control these tier 1 firms, industries. Although ownership of part of the tier 1 firms is private as their shares are being traded in the stock exchange, government remains controlled. Managers of the large tier 1 firms are appointed by the Chinese Communist Party. In the tier 2, it consists of dynamic group of firms of industry that can be overlapped across tier 1 and 2. There are also global firms that could achieve some success. Tier 3 small-scale firms which mostly are town or village enterprises that are privatized. They are relatively low-tech with little government intervention. China is the second largest economy as measured by the size of nominal GDP. It's just behind USA. China has also had high GDP growth, although it has been slowed down this year. It estimates to have 6.8% of GDP growth in 2015. Its inflation it's just have modest figures of 2%. Its unemployment rate has been stable for China, which has been staying around 4% for the past decade. It is not a big issue as compared to the Eurozone countries and even the United States of America. We move on to the finance and banking systems. The firms in China obtain their capital via bank credits the most. It is around 128% of GDP as compared to 48% of GDP in the States. In the United States, the capital market are relatively undeveloped as compared to the US. Look at the stock markets. Since majority of the stakes on those large state-owned enterprises are controlled by the government, the other shareholders are not able to influence those companies' decisions. Thus, long-term investment are not popular. Investors opt to speculate short-term gains instead. It only makes up as 44% of GDP as compared to 118% of GDP for the United States. For the bond markets as well, the capital provided only consists of 41% of GDP as compared to 240% GDP for the United States. Five banks dominated the banks and financial institutions. They consist of 50% of the market share. The Bank of China, Agricultural Bank of China, China Construction Bank, Industrial and Commercial Bank of China, and Bank of Communications. Let's look at the regulatories of China's capital markets. The China's Banking Regulatory Commission oversees the banks and financial institutions. For the securities and derivatives markets, the China Securities Regulatory Commission regulates them and oversees their stock and futures exchange. The China Insurance Regulatory Commission regulates the insurance markets. The central bank for China is called the People's Bank of China. It manages the monetary policies, set limits on deposits and lending interest for banks. It also acts as a last resort for banks during financial crisis. The current governor is named as Zhou Xiaochuan. China's constitution is viewed as the highest source of law in China. The other laws with general impact are legislated by the National People's Congress and its Standing Committee. It is deemed to have the highest organ of state power. The administrative and executions of policies are handled and enforced by the State Council. China is primarily based on the civil law model. Let's look at its court system. The grassroots people's courts are local level courts that handle criminal and civil cases of first instance. It excludes criminal cases carrying penalty of death or life imprisonment. It can request more important cases to be transferred to the higher courts. The intermediate people's courts handle cases that are transferred from grassroots courts. It handles criminal cases subject to life imprisonment or death. It also hears appeals and protests. The High People's Court handles cases assigned by law or transferred from lower courts, major criminal cases which impact the entire provinces. It also hears appeals or protests against judgment of lower courts. The Supreme People's Court handles cases that have been assigned by law or over cases that it decides to try. It has jurisdiction over appeals or protests from High People's Court and Special People's Court. That's the end of the presentation. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.